Well, from the reaction we got on those business post-World War II economic videos, I guess you really like them. They are pretty good, aren't they? Be back in just a second to tell you a little bit about it. If you don't know who I am, I'm Tom Reich, Dr. Reich, and we're Make Business Smarter. Back in the late 1940s and 1950s, something called the Sutherland Corporation, together with a bunch of former Disney animators and later on Fleischer animators, got together and made very high level, very entertaining animation for the theater, and these were shown before films. Today, they'd be like those things that you see on Fox News Morning or CNN News Morning, where there's a 5-minute piece about a corporation or something. But these were done by corporations to give an economic message that the people could understand. So there are 3 or 4 more of them, maybe 5, and we're going to watch them today. I hope you enjoy them. Some of them are a little more school rock looking, and those are the newer ones. And the older ones, of course, are the more classic animation style. And then I may throw in one from IBM at the very end.
Wages and prices often play leapfrog. One jumps up, then the other, which means a steady rise in our cost of living. The Dilly Doll Factory is a happy shop. But Joe, our doll painter friend, seems to be a little down in the mouth, which even shows in his work. Joe is pretty discouraged because the high cost of living makes it harder and harder to make ends meet.
Hiya, Joe, old boy.
Hello.
Better look in that envelope.
Wow, a raise! And just in time to buy the kid a birthday present. What'll I get? Let's see. A dress? Bicycle? Roller skates? Shoes? A book? A doll? A doll! What's the price, miss? I work in a factory that makes this doll. $2 is too much.
I'm very sorry, sir, but your company charged us more for this shipment, so we had to raise our selling price.
We got a wage increase, all right, but it couldn't raise the price that much. It just takes a little wood, rubber, paint, cloth, and a phony wig to make that doll. There's only about 10 cents worth of materials in the whole thing. You pirates, crooks, bandits, you robbers!
You're right about the cost of raw materials in that doll, about 10 cents worth. Raw materials in practically everything we buy are worth little until labor transforms them into finished products. For example, how much do you think the raw materials cost in that car?
Oh, about $300.
You've got a surprise coming. It takes 4.5 tons of coal, 2 3/4 tons of iron ore, 50 pounds of cotton, 14 pounds of cured and finished wool, aluminum, zinc, lead, copper, and countless other raw materials to make an automobile. Without the addition of labor costs, these things are worth about $22. The raw materials require the accumulated labor of thousands of people in countless crafts to transform them into a finished automobile. Miners dig the coal and iron ore. Railroad and maritime workers transport these materials to the steel mill, where workers convert the ore into finished steel. The wages of railroad workers add to the value of steel when it is transported to automobile factories. The cotton that goes into a car accumulates labor cost from the farmer who tills the soil, from workers who sow the seed, and help to raise the cotton. Wages paid to other workers add to the value of the cotton as it is moved from the field to the cotton gin, where it is processed. Other workers transport the cotton to the automobile factory. The wool that is used to make a car is worth little while it is still on the sheep. When the labor cost of a sheep shearer is added, the value of the wool is increased by his wages. When all of the parts and materials finally reach the factory for assembly, the labor cost of automobile workers must be added to the price of the car. In the $1,500 automobile, direct and indirect labor costs add up to approximately $1,200, or over 80% of the selling price. That's before taxes. And what happens to the other 20%, or $300? Raw material cost, $22. Profit to producers of raw materials and allied industries, $89. Profit to part manufacturers, $47. Profit to local dealer, $77. Profit to car manufacturer, $65. Now, when you add $400 for taxes, the cost is $1,900 to the buyer. Like the dolls you make, an automobile has a low raw material cost and a high labor cost, and that goes for practically everything we buy.
Oh, yeah? Well, what's the labor cost in a buck's worth of steak?
We'll start back at the farm where Bully Boy was raised. The selling price of meat has to include the labor cost in producing the feed, in building fences, and constructing housing for our animal friend. It takes a lot of costly care to get Bully Boy ready for the market. Wages have to be paid to railroad workers who provide our friend with care and courtesy on his way to the stockyards. Preparing Bully Boy's anatomy for the butcher shop costs money, too. The family butcher figures in his wages every time he sells a thick, juicy steak. Forgetting taxes for a moment, the labor cost in a dollar's worth of meat adds up like this. Workers raising beef, 24 cents. Transportation workers, 1/2 cent. Packing house workers, 42 cents. Meat delivery drivers, 1/2 cent. Butcher shop workers, 18 cents. The other 15 cents goes in profits to the retailers, the packers, allied industries, and to the farmers and ranchers. Most of the things we buy accumulate direct and indirect labor costs that add up to 85% of the selling price before taxes are added. Generally speaking, a wage raise means a corresponding rise in prices, unless productivity is increased proportionately.
What do you want, a guy with 4 arms? 4 arms? Say, I got a sensational idea.
To expand productivity, labor and management must work together to develop new ideas and techniques. expand productivity, capital must finance the creation of more efficient tools and plants. The production of more and better goods at lower costs means that when you get a wage raise, it's a real raise.
A raise. A raise! I want to buy a doll. How much?
Now you've got a real wage raise because you can buy more with what you earn. With increased productivity, wages can keep ahead of prices.
Now, this is going to be a picture of you. So who will volunteer to help us? Won't someone stand up? Ah, that's fine. Suppose we choose this man here, and the rest of you may sit down. Just stand still a minute, friend. There now. You can sit down, too. And now, let's get on with our story. A story about you and your worst enemy. Now, you have already learned to protect yourself from many of your enemies. For instance, you've learned to wear clothes to protect your body from heat and cold. You've learned to grow fine crops. And you raise pigs and chickens. These things all protect you from the enemy, hunger. And if a storm should come, you find shelter in your house. Where you've learned to protect yourself from the weather, too. But even your house won't protect you from your worst enemy, an enemy who may be here in this room right now, hiding in the dark corners, lurking in the most unexpected places, a great unseen enemy, deadly and silent, ready to strike in an instant, ready to attack you without warning. No, wait. It's no use running away. No one can run away from disease. Yes, that's right. It's disease that is your worst enemy. For disease can be anywhere. In the air you breathe. In the ground you walk on. Or, hey, wait, don't drink that water. Disease can be in water, too. Yes, I know, it looks clear and pure. But you see, disease is caused by tiny living creatures. Creatures so small you couldn't possibly see them. This water may be full of them. But here, let's call on a man who knows all about these little creatures. The doctor. He studies disease every day by using a very wonderful instrument, the microscope. Now, there's nothing mysterious about a microscope. It's just an instrument to make things look bigger than they really are. But suppose we show you how it works. If you don't mind, Doctor, we'll borrow your glasses. Thank you. And, oh, just a minute, Mr. Fly. We're going to look at you through the doctor's glasses. See? These glasses will magnify. That means they will make the fly look bigger than he really is. But let's try a stronger magnifying glass. You see? Now the fly looks even bigger. If we use 2 strong glasses, the fly grows larger again. And if we use 3, or even 4 glasses, the fly begins to look like a monster. Here, let's look at his leg. Why, his leg is covered with hair. And so, through our magnifying glasses, we're seeing something we've never seen before. Now, if we take these 4 glasses, put a tube around them, we have a microscope. Simple, isn't it? And yet, by looking through this instrument, we can actually see the tiny creatures that cause disease. All right? Let's try our microscope on some of that water you were going to drink. This little piece of glass has a drop of that water on it, and we're going to look at it through the microscope. Come on now, everybody, watch closely. There, see? The water is full of tiny living creatures called microbes, the deadly little enemies that cause disease. Now, perhaps you wonder how these tiny microbes can harm a big, strong person like you. Well, just look at this giant tree, tall and sturdy and strong. You'd think it would take something mighty big and powerful to hurt this great tree, wouldn't you? But let's get real close. Do you see this little beetle on the trunk? Just watch him. See? He's boring a hole in the bark. Well, one tiny beetle certainly can't hurt a big tree like this. But suppose we go inside and see what it's doing. Look at that. The beetle's drilled deep into the wood and laid its eggs. And now look, the eggs have hatched, and the young beetles are boring more holes and laying more eggs. Then there are more beetles, and still more, until finally there are thousands of beetles, all eating away at the life of the great tree. Now the tree becomes sick, and before long, the tree dies, killed by tiny enemies much smaller than itself. Now, let's suppose you drank some of this bad water. If we could look inside you, we'd see that the microbes are carried down into your intestines, like this. And now we can watch the little enemies begin their deadly work. At first, there may only be a few of them, but see what is happening. The microbes are growing fat as they eat your body, and as each microbe grows larger, it splits and becomes 2. And these grow and split again, and become 2 more. Now the microbes multiply by the thousands, just like the beetles in the tree. Soon your body would begin to lose its strength, and before long, you are a very sick man, all because of these tiny microbes in the water you drank. But remember, it isn't only in water that we find these little killers. No. With our microscope, we can find microbes almost anywhere. Suppose we take a look around your farm. What's this? You have no latrine? You use the cornfield? Well, remember we said there were microbes in the soil? You see? Here they are, the vicious, deadly killers that live in soil foul with human waste. But these microbes are not only in the field. They may be right inside your house. Let's go inside and see. Well, there are some flies on the table. Now, you may think that flies are harmless, but let's look at the fly's leg through our microscope. See? It's covered with filth. If we look closer, we see the filth is full of microbes from the field where you left your waste. And when the fly walks across your food, he'll leave thousands of these deadly killers behind. But microbes can be found in other places, too. We see that many people sleep in this room, and one of them is sick. Well, this is where we find microbes in the air. Microbes that came from the sick person's lungs. And now, as the others breathe, they draw into their bodies the disease that is in the air. If we look around, we may find other microbes in this room. This is the Anopheles mosquito. Our microscope would show that this Anopheles mosquito is full of malaria microbes. And when the mosquito bites you, it will leave many of these microbes in your blood. Then you will have the disease the mosquito carries. Yes, it's true that disease can be anywhere, and you must protect yourself against it. You must fight it. How? By attacking disease before it attacks you. First of all, build yourself a latrine. That way you'll destroy the breeding place of disease and the flies that carry it. Cover your food so the flies can't get at it. Cover your bed at night. Then the mosquito can't reach you, and you'll be safe from the disease the mosquito carries. So we have seen that there are many kinds of microbes. But remember this, they are all living creatures. Therefore, the microbes themselves can be killed. For instance, the microbes we saw in the water can be killed by boiling the water before you drink it. The microbes that live in dirt and filth can be killed with soap and water. So wash yourself regularly. The sun will kill microbes. Fresh air is your friend, too. So let's put windows in your house. And let the sun and fresh air come in and help you. Now that you know what disease is, you must fight it wherever you find it. Protect yourself against it, and you will make your life healthy, happy, and prosperous.
You can call me Rusty. Oh, I'm not a car. I'm a spy from Mars. My mission? To scout this planet for... Oh, but let's begin at the beginning, shall we? You see, we're running out of oxygen on our planet. And this Earth looked inviting. Good roads, plenty of minerals, and we tuned in an inspiring message.
All men are children of God. Put out pride and envy by putting God first. We are our brother's keeper. We do unto him as we would have him do unto us. Thou shalt not kill.
Children of God, like us. I couldn't wait to start. But I skidded into a situation that was really wild. There were beings who looked like me, called cars. But they were slaves to a race of creatures who had only 2 legs. Brutal. I looked around, and I found a kind of rest home. I slipped on a disguise and found a wavelength on which I could communicate with my kind of beings.
Man, I mean, like, you know, they drive us crazy.
We can't do a thing on our own.
Well, I mean, like, some of the young ones, they're not so bad at try. They got their driving school.
Pitifully few.
And that they have alert minds and good reflexes.
Still, we'd never get very far unless we helped each other. I was idling there, just sort of gassing away with my new friends, when suddenly I was captured by a two-legs myself. It was useless trying to communicate, no intelligence. And he steered me into situations that would make your engine boil. I beg your pardon. You first. And the things I saw on your highways. They all had the right of way. These two legs have a peculiar fluid, alcohol. You see, just a drink or two releases inhibitions but slows down reflexes. What a combination. Some of them even like getting loaded and blasting off in 2 tons of steel aimed for trouble. They rarely miss. I found that in every single hour on this primitive planet, 4 of the creatures die in a car crash, and that there's been a fatal accident for every 1.5 miles of paved road. And in my mind, I kept hearing that voice we'd picked up on Mars.
All men are children of God. Christian love demands Christian concern for the rights of others. Put out pride and envy by putting God first. We are our brother's keeper. We do unto him as we would have him do unto us. Thou shalt not kill.
What a nightmare it was until I made my escape. What a world! You say that driving is not a right, but a privilege. That to endanger yourself and others is a violation of moral law as well as statutory law. You say the right of way is not as important as God's right way. That reckless driving is a sin. But you say one thing and do another. And every day there are more creatures, more cars, more smash-ups. That's why I'm leaving. But you, where are you going?
Gee, I'm glad you stayed all night, Bobby. Don't you like the cereal? Oh, yeah. But it's a little mushy. It's not crisp like the kind my breakfast pals serve Dad and me at home. Your breakfast pals? Sure, they come every morning as soon as I whistle. What? I'm Snap. I'm Crackle. I'm Pop. At your service, Bobby.
Oh, yeah? Hey, gang. These guys is muscling in. Let's get him. Come on, Mushy. Hey, let's go, Sobby.
These Rice Krispies are swell. Look, they float. Sure, and they're so crisp, it's noisy. Hear it? Crisp to the last spoonful.
Let's bring our editorial microscope into focus on a very significant phenomenon: the middle-income consumer. You may have met this character in Fortune's now famous series on the changing American market, which portrayed his dramatic rise into the dominant economic personality of our time. This 1953 study showed that the zoom in the American market after the war, the unprecedented volume of goods of all kinds gobbled up by an insatiable tide of buyers, was largely the work of this middle-income man. Let's update his story, its basic facts and figures, to the present day. The biggest single fact in the story is this: despite higher taxes, despite post-war inflation, the middle-income consumer has roughly 50% more spending power today than he had a generation ago. In real income, $240 billion. He has fed new demands into the production apparatus of industry, accounting for the housing boom, appliance sales, the rush for prepared foods, even the once exclusive preserve of the exclusive rich. The luxury market has been invaded in force and virtually captured by the middle-income buyer. And this is only the seagoing phase of a campaign that has succeeded in changing the entire shape of the luxury market. How did it happen? Through a revolutionary change in the way U.S. income is distributed. In 1947, 27% of the population was in the middle income range, earning between $4,000 and $7,500 a year. In all, there were almost 13 million families in this bracket. By 1953, as Fortune told us, 5 million more families moved into this income category. Today, more than 1 million more families have promoted themselves to middle incomes. In terms of dollars, the families in this bracket now receive more than 42% of all income, real income. And their spending is just as real. Food is now a $64.5 billion market, up 8% since 1953. Clothing sales, up 6% from 1953. Housing, for the 7th straight year, the industry has topped 1 million starts. Home goods, furniture, TV, electrical appliances and such, up 15% since '53. The family car, 7.5 million autos bought in '55. So far, demand has matched the incredible pace of American productivity, stride for stride. Let's look at the production story a moment. Over the past century, production per man-hour showed an average increase of 2% per year. These 2 percentage points, compounded annually, doubled production over the last generation, quadrupled it over the last 2 generations. They made America. But see what has happened since 1947. The yearly rate of increase has risen 50%, and the implications of that rise are truly staggering. If sustained, as it seems likely to be, it will remake America. Production per man-hour is slated to redouble by 1980. But this productive potential, if it is to translate itself into standard of living, has got to be sold, and in large measure, sold to him. Thus, marketing becomes the pivot on which our continued prosperity turns. Marketing must make the growing production mesh with the expanding market. This is where the challenge now lies. To meet that challenge, American business has taken a new look at its own attitude to marketing and advertising. Over the past 30 years, the ups and downs of advertising activity kept pace with the ups and downs of consumer spending. When sales rose, promotional activities rose. When sales dropped, advertising dropped. But in 1949, and again in 1953 and '54, there was a change. As the volume of sales slid down, advertisers countered by moving the volume of advertising steadily up. For the first time, advertising and selling were allowed to create sales, instead of sales creating advertising and selling. How come? That's the question we put to a group of manufacturers recently. Here are the answers. The vice president of a leading camera company said, "In 1954, our advertising appropriation increased approximately 20% over 1953, whereas sales showed no change. As a result, we were able not only to hold our own in the marketplace, but to stabilize our employment levels." The president of a top oil company told us, "Our plans call for a continuation of our present aggressive advertising and promotional efforts. We fully expect our competitors to do likewise." The president of the #1 beverage company said, "Businessmen today regard advertising as an investment rather than just a business expense." And the president of a leading tire and rubber company put it this way, "Advertising and other sales activities should not move up and down with minor changes in the total volume of business. They should maintain a steady pace geared to the overall growth trend." These statements represent a very real and important change in business thinking. The feeling is abroad that aggressive advertising and marketing, while they may not prevent short cyclical downturns in the economy, nevertheless will have a strong stabilizing effect over the long haul. This is exactly what happened when 1955 moved far ahead of the 1953-54 dip. The basic reasons for the new outlook are, first, a new confidence in the ability of government to help maintain economic stability. Businessmen now recognize that government is better equipped and better able to help check an inflationary or deflationary cycle. That government is constantly on the alert for any sudden rise or fall in the business barometer. Second, and far more important, is the growing awareness of business leaders that the number one job of industry today is distribution. Moving the goods into the hands of consumers, matching desires with income, prices with costs, consumption with production. This is the function of marketing. And marketing, as management now realizes, consists of all company operations, except only physical production. All the services that help move the product to the buyer. Marketing research, product designing, product testing, product servicing, merchandising, packaging, pricing, physical handling, storage and transportation, credit and financing, accounting and billing, sales organization, sales force, sales outlets, retail selling, advertising, public relations. Where's the kitchen sink? Well, if you happen to manufacture kitchen sinks, there it is, right on top. The tangible product whose distribution depends on the successful interplay of all these 17 marketing functions. A manufacturer has a complete marketing plan only if he has covered every one of these vital operations. A third reason why businessmen have turned increasing attention to creative marketing is the changing American market, expressed in the zooming birth rate, with bigger families back in style, the amazing mushroom growth of suburban America, the upgraded scale of income everywhere, and especially the new pattern of income distribution, which has let its bounty fall smack in the middle range of income. As these groups continue to benefit, as our birth rate and productivity grow, they open the door to new markets for additional goods and services to challenge the imagination. Marketing and advertising can and must rise to new heights as we come to grips with the opportunities that lie ahead. Our first and biggest opportunity is the expanding population. Markets are people with incomes and demands. In the past 2 years alone, our population has increased by 5 million, a new American every 2 minutes. According to reasonable estimates, we should reach 175 million by 1960. And as the 60s progress, the babies born in the 40s will be creating babies of their own, meaning a new surge in the birth rate. The promise for 1970 is a population of 195 million. Obviously, these figures are charged with meaning for those who process foods and manufacture drugs, footwear, and apparel. In fact, the increasing demand for goods and services is bound to reverberate throughout industry. Opportunity, highway construction. As a nation, our life is slowly being choked by our antiquated highway system. The government has a $100 billion highway program, which offers a profusion of opportunity for anyone with a stake in America, from the lady who likes her eggs country fresh to the men who make road-building machinery, who can well look to a $250 million increase in sales a year. New highways mean steel of all kinds, and sales of steel can expect to increase by $344 million a year. Cement, concrete, asphalt, tar, road oils, an increase of $435 million a year. And just think of what will happen to the production, sales, and service of automobiles, truck and bus transportation, gasoline and oil and tires. These functions account for nearly 10 million jobs, meaning 10 million wage earners and their families better able to buy products of all kinds in every locality of the U.S. Opportunity, rewiring the home. It's a fact that 4 out of every 5 American homes cannot accommodate the electrical wonders of today. Why? Because most homes are not adequately wired for modern appliances. Here's a giant-size opportunity, an $8 billion order for raw materials producers of copper, steel, insulation. electrical appliance manufacturers and distributors, and the people who plan or work for them. Public utilities, which must meet the resulting upsurge in demand for gas, oil, and electric power. Opportunity, urban redevelopment. Think of a business, any business, industrial or consumer, and then imagine the opportunities that would open for that business if our cities would step up their present redevelopment programs. Our cities need enlarged parking facilities, more bridges, redevelopment of slums. Add the crying need for new city schools, hospitals, and recreation centers, and urban redevelopment emerges as the biggest single task and opportunity ahead. Less tangible, but just as real, is the opportunity in new product development. The past is only an inkling of the future. And look at what jet planes, penicillin, nylon, television have meant to our economy and our workforce. This much is certain. 10 years from now, a good part of our workforce will be making products as yet unknown or now incubating in laboratories. A recent statement by a giant electrical company, referring especially to electronic and atomic energy, summed up the near future in these words: "The fields are so promising that we expect to produce more in the next 10 years than in all of the previous 75 years of our existence." Opportunity, the suburbs. 1/5 of America, over 32 million people, now live in the suburbs, and 1.25 million more are moving in each year. This shifting tide of population carries with it a clamor for new shopping centers, new schools, new highways, new fulfillments for off hours and leisure time. As it builds, suburbia becomes a green pasture for every conceivable type of insurance line. And suburban living opens new opportunities for beverages of all kinds, sporting goods, the entire spectrum of consumer goods and services. Opportunity, education. The number of high school graduates has doubled since as recent a year as 1940. This in itself means opportunity to the business community, for it's a matter of straight statistics that the higher the education, the higher the demand for more goods, better food, more leisure, more travel, more education. A people with high standards of education is a people with high standards of living. Opportunity, leisure time. The average American today works 15% fewer hours than he did a generation ago. Yet his productivity is more than half again as high. Both trends, rising productivity and shorter hours, will continue. The increase in leisure time, now and in the years ahead, is a creative economic force bringing new needs, hence new opportunities for marketing. These are only a sampling of the great opportunities in store. Opportunities that could and should and will be seized by American businessmen to create more goods, more jobs, more income, and more opportunities for us all. As we peer into the future, the signposts become visible, even legible. We know we are somewhere in the middle of a period of unprecedented economic change. As one industry spokesman recently wrote, "For those of us who view history as a fascinating spectacle, the prospect of the coming quarter century is exhilarating. It is as if we were privileged not only to see, but to participate in centuries of development, telescoped into a brief span." It is not too early to train your sights on this prospect right now.
Ever since the time when man began to control his environment, he has been plagued by his limited ability to speculate. His failure to accurately predict the effect and the consequences of his proposed action. This is the result of his not being able to consider and relate all the factors in a problem. Evidence of this inability can be seen in the persistence of a certain kind of myth involving this. In a frantic effort to reap immediate reward, the first is often not too wise. The second usually tends to overcorrect. Our hero can consider himself lucky if after the last wish, he ends up just where he started. But there were men whose wishes were not only prudent, but had a habit of coming true. These men and women were artists and had certain characteristics in common. They were seldom bored with anything. They were constantly building up stores of information in active memory banks. When confronted with a specific need, they would call on these memory banks for information, which they would run through, sort out, and relate to the problem at hand. These men could speculate and could predict. They were artists, artists in many fields: architecture, mechanics, medicine, science, politics, and the art of relating factors. It is often not a conscious art, and the degree to which it is operative can tend to make one normal, bright, super bright, or genius. Numbers were used to count, but soon they were also being used as abstract symbols for states of being. Values were given to mass, speed, inertia, and the forces of gravity. Such measurement was an enormous help to creative thinking. Man was learning to numerically relate and to predict. Theories were developed by which the many factors in a problem could be numerically related. But the magnitude of the calculations necessary made many such theories impractical. In the last century, the complications of our society have been compounding themselves, and it began to look as though the science of numerical relationships could never catch up. For a long time in the world of numbers, man has been developing tools to help him handle increasing amounts of data. Something has now emerged that might make even our most elegant theories workable. The recent acceleration has been fantastic. The electronic calculator has already become a tool upon which much of our daily activities depend. A tool which has broadened the range of man's concepts and intuition, much the way other tools have broadened man's range of communications, or man's range of travel, or the phenomenal range of his control over environment. With the computer, as with any tool, the concept and direction must come from the man. The task that is set and the data that is given must be man's decision and his responsibility. This is information. The proper use of it can bring a new dignity to mankind. Properly related, it can maintain a balance between man's needs and his resources. In many aspects, these are information machines, capable of storing, processing, and relating a vast quantity of information. They process information so that it can be made meaningful at the human scale. Computers are generally used in any of three ways. First, as a control or balance. Second, as a function of design. Third, as a simulation or model of life, where we can see the effect before taking the action. As a control or balance, the calculator keeps our complicated systems functioning. It determines the logistics of raw material, its inventory and flow, history and performance of tools, and of personnel, production rate and quality, public utilities rates and flow, cost accounting, payrolls, billing, and all the ramifications of insurance. And in addition, presents the broadest possible basis for making decisions. As a function of design, the calculator provides creative man a higher platform upon which to stand and from which to work. Data processing removes the drudgery, but imposes new and broad responsibilities. The designer must be able to state precisely what it is he needs to know. This is not always so easy. He must formulate a general plan of procedure. This plan or program takes the greater part of all the time involved. He must write a concise step-by-step list of instructions, code, and feed it to the computer. Then he must provide the machine with all pertinent background information and related data. The preparation may have taken months, the actual calculation hours or even minutes. But once set up, it can attack the problem with infinite variations and trustworthy memory. Perhaps the most challenging use of the computer is the simulation of real situations. If, for example, a machine is properly programmed and is provided with sufficient numerical data concerning a chemical plant, then the computer begins to take on the functions of a working mathematical model of that chemical plant, in which it is possible to determine the probable effects of many possible courses of action. Of railroad systems, rocket engines, complete reactors, and whole living communities. The calculator is helping to define society's most complicated problems. It is a tool for turning inspiration into fruitful prediction. As an information machine, it has done much to broaden the base of our growing concepts. But the real miracle is the promise that there will also be room for those smallest details that have been the basis for man's most rewarding wishes. This is a story of a technique in the service of mankind.